It's time now for the KC Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's KC Ingram.
Well, good afternoon, Stuart. We have another great show on tap this evening, but before we get into the show, I want to let everybody know there is going to be a town hall meeting this Thursday at 6:30. It's going to be at the Martin County High School Auditorium, and the town hall is on keeping our students safe. It's sponsored by Rebecca Negron, who is a member of the school board, and on that panel, among others, will be Sheriff Snyder and Marcia Powers, also a member of the school board. So, it's free to everybody. Hoping the parents come out. This is such an important topic to talk about, and Rebecca really wanted to sponsor this to start the conversation and get the input of the community. So again, that's a town hall meeting on keeping our students safe, Martin County High School Auditorium, this Thursday, March 1st, starting at 6:30. So in the studio with me this evening, a very exciting author and guest. I have Michael Solomon, and I had the opportunity to read one of his first books, I believe, that you wrote. It's called The Conversion Prophecy.
Actually, my last one.
It's your last book. I thought it was your first.
No, my first was a business book. My second was Where Did My America Go? Political expose, and then this was my first venture into fiction.
Which was an excellent book, but it's kind of something I'm not sure about so much fiction.
It's turning out not to be fiction.
That's right. You start reading this and saying this could happen. But Michael, let me start out a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, God, it goes way back. I started out as a police officer in New York and received a few promotions. Wound up as running a division of the Organized Crime Control Bureau, basically in the narcotics division. And from there, I was in the intelligence division for a while. While I was in the intelligence division, I was assigned to embassy duty, and I was assigned as the bodyguard to the Shah of Iran every time he came into New York, and Madam Chang from China, Taiwan actually, when she came in for the General Assembly. Left the police department after 15 years. I vested my pension after I had a tax practice on the side. I found a problem with the city's disability law. I plugged a leak, and they saved them over $130 million that balanced the budget that year.
Wow, what kind of thank you did you get for that?
That was, I got to thank you. I got an exit out the door because they took credit for the whole thing.
Oh, no.
But you couldn't write the resume because I did it with an editorial reply on the radio, and then they did an editorial on me, no reward for police officer who bails out the city.
Wow.
You couldn't write that resume. The phone was ringing off the wall. Everybody wanted to get a hold of me. So I left and took a position with the company. It was a manufacturing company. I helped them move from $2.5 million in sales to a $27 million division. And they wanted me to move to Dayton, Ohio. And if I said to my wife at the time, honey, you're going to love Dayton. She said, not like you're going to miss me, honey.
Oh.
So and this was, Carter had just come out of the White House. Reagan had just got, I don't have to tell you what the economy was like. Try to find a job.
Tough.
So I was dead broke by 1983, literally dead broke. Went into business, never looked back. And within 5 years, I had hired 12 people and became a millionaire in 5 years. Started to give away my money. I helped build the Tomorrow's Children's Fund in Hackensack, New Jersey with Don Imus, and just gave it away, most of it, and retired after 18 years, moved to Florida, scratched my head, said, what am I doing here? I'm too young for this. So I started to write. So I wrote a business book, which nobody wanted to publish. I self-published it, and it became a hit. Forbes magazine reviewed it, said it belonged on the desk of every CEO in America. And that took off. The title of that was Success by Default, the Depersonalization of Corporate America. There are no people left. There's no relationships left anywhere.
No, there is not.
I don't have to tell you that.
No.
And then 2 years later, I wrote Where Did My America Go?, which was an expose on how politics has changed over the last 100 years and not for the better in this country. And I said, if you're as angry as I am, or as you're fed up as I am in the last chapter, I paraphrased Harry Beale from the movie Network, if you remember it. Mm-hmm. And I said, maybe it's time we have another Tea Party. And that launched the Tea Party movement in 2007. We held the first Tea Party, but the book was written and published in October of 2006. So Barack Obama was still in the Illinois Senate. He had just won the U.S. senatorship 6 weeks later. So it had nothing to do with him or anybody else. And then it was sort of hijacked the way it died out until Rick Santelli got up on TV and ranted and raved again and took off from there. So.
Well, the Tea Party was a huge movement. And
tremendous movement. It was the largest political movement in America since the Civil War.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, if you think about it.
And it certainly was. It was something everybody heard about.
And it
and
never
that's
was
why
a membership. Everybody thinks, oh, my God, you're a member. You're not a member.
Wasn't anything.
If I wanted to hold a Tea Party, I just throw out an ad on Facebook or wherever it is. We're going to be on the steps of City Hall tomorrow afternoon. Show up, and, boy, you turn around, there's 3,000 people there.
A lot of conservatives
All
out
would
there.
have come, and it's not only conservatives, there are a lot of Democrats, too, involved. A lot of the Blue Dog Democrats. And it's just people who got fed up with everything going on.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, you were named, among others, as Time Magazine Person of the Year in 2006.
Yeah, I was. Me and everybody else who had a cell phone in those days that was pumping things out on the internet. What Time did in those days, and they said that the Person of the Year for 2006 is you, and they had a little Mylar mirror on the cover. It was a 3x5 piece of Mylar, and when you looked at it, you saw your reflection. So I read the article, and I said, Time didn't do this because they did this out of political correctness. They didn't want all their readers to feel bad. So, and then I explained why and everything else, and I said, well, thank you, Time. Because of you, I now have a new line on my resume. And then people have said, well, you can't say that. I said, why can't I? Is anybody who fits their description was named as the Person of the Year. I mean, it's just like the Ebola doctors 2 years ago. They said Time Magazine's Person of the Year were going to be all the doctors who worked on Ebola. Well, if you're one of those doctors, you could legally say I was named among others. You didn't say you was alone. As Person of the Year.
That's right.
And there's a great op-ed I wrote about it. I'm going to send you a copy.
I would love to see it. And he's sitting right here in our studio in Stuart, Florida, today. But on a serious note as well, you've appeared on over 350 radio and television talk shows, and you've been a panelist on Fox Business News as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
You're well respected, certainly within the conservative community, for your business beliefs and political beliefs, and now certainly as an author.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. That, by the way, has been turned into a screenplay where any producers out there that are listening.
You did not tell me that. The Conversion Prophecy, I had a chance to read it over the weekend. I bought it right before the show. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. It's an easy read. You can follow along with it, and it's a story that really it grabs your attention, and you want to not put it down. You want to read it to the end. So tell me a little bit about it. What is the basis of the Conversion Prophecy?
I started to think back when in 2009, after Barack Obama was sworn in and they held the bailouts of the banks and everything else, they bailed out Citibank. And I said, why? I said, because 2 years earlier, they borrowed money from the Chinese and the Saudis for $11 billion at about 9%. And in addition to that, they got 4.9% of their stock. Anything over 5%, the SEC gets involved. And they could have put a stop to it, but they didn't. So they had basically controlling interest of the bank. So I'm saying, why are we bailing them out? They don't even own them. My position would have been they should have broken it back up. They should have taken the insurance company out of it, and they should have taken Travelers out of it and put Citibank in and let it break up to regional banks. It would have been fine. But no, they wanted to bail it out like everybody else. And I started to think about it, and I said, what if the Saudis bought it? What if Islam got bought into the bank for a reason? And then I realized it was a hotel in Vegas, the Palms Hotel, that was purchased by a Muslim family out of California. And I'm saying, which is totally against the covenants of the Quran. I mean, gambling, vice, liquor.
So what are they doing with that, right?
So what are they doing with it? And then I started to say, what if they are methodically buying up all the corporations in America slowly? And I used the analogy of the way Disney bought the land in Orlando, opened up 20 little brokerage firms, bought a little property here, a little there, one day consolidated and say, guess what, folks? I own Orange County, Florida.
Caught everybody by surprise.
Sure did. Well, I got to tell you, thank God he did it, because he did a hell of a job up there.
Yes, he did.
That's besides the point. So I said, so in the book, basically the story is that they open up about 900 little brokerage firms. They don't open the firms. They go to 900 little brokerage firms all over the world, and they pump in all this money. And
just under the radar.
Under the radar, and the money's coming from gambling, from hotel administration, from oil,
drugs,
and from drugs. Because there's a part in the book which shocked the hell out of me, because I didn't realize, this is fiction, But anyway, and they take all that money and they invest a little here, a little there, and one day they have a G20 conference in Saudi Arabia, which is by 2025, this goes out 15 years from now. There's now an Islamic Union, like a European Union, and they go to it G8 conference there, and who's sitting in the mosque but the CEOs of all the major corporations in the world, and the word is, you either go back, fly the Islamic flag, or we starve you into submission. I'm not going to tell you readers and your listeners how how it ends, but I will tell you this. It's my belief that novels are fairy tales for adults.
Right.
And most fairy tales end happily. So
That's right. That's right. We're going
but
to share how this ended.
and what's amazing is that in the book, I describe how Verizon, and I say it in the book, is going to take over the internet and be the only internet supplier in the world. And sure enough, 6 weeks after the book's out, they bought AOL, then they bought Yahoo. They're looking at other companies. I said that there'll only be 2 regional airlines in the United States, national airlines in the United States, by the year 2020. Since the American Airlines US Air merger last year, we're down to 3, 1 to go. I said that there'll be only 1 auto manufacturer or 2 auto manufacturers in the world that's going to control.
That's right.
All the manufacturing. And just this last summer, Carlo Goshen, who is a Lebanese, who is the CEO of Renault and Nissan, said that by the year 2025, there's only going to be 1 manufacturer in the world that's going to control 80% of the industry. Whoa. And Dinar Holding, who I didn't mention them by name, but I said there'll be one company in the world that's going to control all of fresh water. And sure enough, Dinar Holding just bought up a couple of other water companies. They own 80% of the fresh water in the world, and it's getting crazy. I said all the food networks are going to merge, and what do we got? We got Kraft and Heinz, and they're all together now as one. And now it looks like ConAgra wants to buy it all. So
it is. It's a frightening.
It's all
book.
coming true, and it's frightening. And the biggest frightening part about the book is in there. I describe that Iran has a secret pharmaceutical house, and they're pumping in cocaine and heroin and everything else into the U.S., and they control the cartels in South America. And there's a whole thing in the book where they pump it in there. And just 6 weeks ago, we just found out that Obama put a stop to the investigation of the pharmaceutical houses and the drugs being sent out through ISIS and from Iran so he can do his nuclear deal. And I'm saying to myself,
this is all.
Am I really
this fiction
Nostradamus
is starting. Yes, this fiction is becoming all
so
too real.
It's unbelievable, and it was written, as I said, it was written as a screenplay. So we're waiting for a producer to pick it up. So
it would be a fabulous movie. It absolutely would.
Yeah,
be.
it's almost like a Manchurian Candidate.
It is, and it's one of those books where at the time that the setting is everybody gets along, the whole world. This is something that we haven't seen in history, but it's very, as you said, a utopian society, and so that's why it flew under the radar, because everybody is getting along. And one of the statements in your book that really caught me, that I believe is so true when you're talking about the Quran, is when they were at the G20 and the leader of the Islam society said, well, we are a peaceful world, but that's your peace, not ours.
Right.
Not ours. So, and then they go into explain that. But it's an absolute fantastic book, and it holds.
And
the
only research I did for the book was I read the Quran from cover to cover. And if you do, by the way, it'll scare you. It will scare you.
Tell us a little bit about the cover design. It seems a little provocative.
Well, the cover design is basically, my publisher and I got together. I designed the cover, but what we were thinking about was we wanted to use an Islamic flag there, like covering the world and such. And there were so many Islamic flags out there, so we said, well, what's the common thread? Well, the commonality of all of those flags is it has the crescent with the star.
Okay.
So basically what we did was we took that part of the Islamic flag, which is probably about 40 different flags out there that have it, and we used that to sort of encapture the world, the globe. But the hero in the book is in a watermark behind the globe.
Interesting.
So
I didn't notice that.
you gotta really read to the end to get it. But it's a 1 night, 2 night book. It's one of those things you'll zip right through.
You do.
It's I read it conversationally, so you could just zip right through.
You can. I read it over the course of the weekend, so 2 days, and it wasn't full reading, and it's a wonderful read, though. You really want to read it all in one day. It's just life takes over. Sometimes you can't get through the whole thing, but you pick it up the next day.
True.
Do you believe that your novel is controversial with regard to the Islamic religion?
I'm not worried. It's not that controversial because basically it tells the truth about the Quran. Yeah. And I only use 1 or 2 edicts in the Quran that I use to explain the philosophy behind it.
Okay.
And it's basically taqiyya and kitman, which is which everybody knows that you're allowed to fool your enemies,
right?
To get them to
further
basically
advance
convert, to advance your agenda, and to get them to convert. And that's basically what I did. So the ending is a shock because we took their own Quran and we turned it around against them, where they thought that all these leaders, all these CEOs of these major corporations were Muslim, actually true Muslims. With surprise, surprise, folks.
It is a surprising book, and the characters in your book are very interesting as well. Some of them you follow all the way through their lives since they were children into adulthood, and they're a very integral part of the book. How did you develop them?
Well, some of them are folks I know. I'll give you
Really?
I'll give you an example. There is a priest in the book, Father Cagnini. I grew up with him. I was the only Jewish kid in the Italian neighborhood, and when you wanted to be with your friends on Saturday afternoon, you had to go to confession because that's where they were. So I used to sit and wait for these guys to come out of confession, and he was to sit down and he would tell us everything we wanted to know about be good to your parents. You know, no different than the rabbis were telling me or anybody else in clergy was telling their parishioners. And we'd get up and he would give everybody communion afterwards, and he'd say to me, "Solomon, don't genuflect because your mother works the bingo games with me, and I don't want to, I don't want to find out about this." So, I, when you're looking for a priest as a character, I said, "Why not Father Cagnini, rest his soul?" I mean, he reminded me of the priest in Barry Fitzgerald in Boys Town, if you remember. He was a little guy, Italian, didn't have that kind of voice. He had a low voice. And he could scream when he wanted to, but he. So that's how I got the priest in the book. A friend of mine always said to me, "Next time you write a book, put me in as a character." And he owns a Greek restaurant in Lantana. So when I needed a chef for a master chef for a trip to Greece, I put Chris in there, so that's how he became that. And, and a personal friend of mine is also a physician of mine, is the White House physician. But you come up with names and you just you use it.
What about the children in the book? How did you come up with those characters?
The two characters?
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, I just they were just invented.
Okay.
That was all imagination. Yeah.
Well, they're very, like I said, an integral part of the story.
And I try to describe things in such detail for when I don't know if you read that part. If you ever been to Istanbul. I don't know if you have. Well, anybody who's been to Istanbul, they feel that ride in that cab because that describes it. I've been there, and that describes it exactly. It's
And I can let future readers know that Michael's absolutely right. The way he describes every item in the book, you'll walk into a room and you'll feel you're in that room, and you can see everything that you envision, as well as how the people are dressed and the way they look. And some of them are kind of slobby people, and some are very well dressed and very refined.
Well,
you come across very well with how you write that.
I try to write that way because I want the reader to be able to, in their mind, picture what it is. I want them to, it's a movie on paper is the way I look at it, and I want the screen to be your mind. So I describe it that way.
What made you decide to write about this topic?
I don't know exactly. I just, I was looking. I was going to go on to another political book, and then I said, it's time for a novel. And knowing what the economic situation was and everything else, and what was going on in Iran, I said, how would that affect the world if suddenly the world was Islamic? If everybody in the world, because they keep preaching, they won't be, and it's in the Quran. There won't be true peace in the world until everybody is a Muslim. So I said, well, what if that really happened? And then I said, well, how are we going to make that happen? And then I said, it's funny because I was writing the book and I said, I can't let Islam beat up Israel.
Oh, you didn't.
I gotta save them. I don't know how.
Yeah, they were the true winners.
I can't. It can't be
Israel
the whole
saved
world.
the day.
It's the only democracy in the Middle East. So, they're the linchpin in this whole thing, as you realize since you finished it. But I won't tell your listeners how it ends. They're going to have to figure that one out for themselves.
Have you ever worried about receiving a fatwa in your life from reading this book and talking about the Quran?
Not from the Muslims. I got fatwas from other enemies. I mean, if I have a fight with my fiance, I don't worry about that stuff.
Okay.
I don't.
Well, Michael, you do a lot of motivational speaking as well, and I want to be able to direct folks
Sure.
to your website, successtalkinginc.com.
Right.
So when you're giving motivational talks, what is that about? What are you motivating?
I basically do a lot of business motivation and a lot of I do some political motivation, but most of my business stuff, and I basically talk to people about things like attitude.
Okay.
I'll give you this simply. One of the exercises I do is I take three words. I take knowledge, hard work and attitude, and I break them down to a code where A equals 1, B equals 2. It's just the value of the letters. If you added up knowledge, you'll see that it adds up to 96.
Oh.
If you add up hard work, it adds up to 98. And we could say that's a percentage, 98% as opposed to 96%. But if you add up the word attitude, it adds up to 100%. So you can have all the knowledge you have, you can put in all the hard work, but if you got a lousy attitude, you're not going to succeed.
That's the truth.
And you know it. You've hired people, I'm sure, and they don't show up, and then you say, "Oh, I'll give them another chance." And my theory is, if they don't show up the first time, how are they going to show up after they have your money?
That's right.
So
they don't.
I look at it that way. But that's what we basically do, and we have a lot of fun with it. And we talk about some of the people in the world who've had great attitudes. You've had good skill. Well, Muhammad Ali is one.
Yes.
He was a great boxer, but when he got in that ring, it was attitude that won those fights.
Yes, absolutely. Sheer attitude.
Sheer attitude, yeah.
So successtalkinc.com, you can find out about your books there as well and what you do. But I want to talk about one other subject with your security background in particular, and we just have a couple minutes left.
Sure.
So, and that's the school shooting in Parkland. What are your thoughts on that? How can we keep our students safer?
Well, it's funny because I wrote some talking points this week for a Fox show, and unfortunately we got preempted by Mueller's indictments.
Oh, of course.
But I came up with something, and people have to realize is that violence is not the problem; it is a consequence of the problem. Violence, not guns, are a product of society being going in the wrong direction, and it's a catalyst and a diversion from reality and social norms. Basically, the shooter is a product of society going bad. He could have walked in that room with a 5-gallon bucket of gasoline, spilled it on the floor, dropped a match, and burned 70, 80 people. He could have waited at the end of the school day and taken a truck and run everybody over in the parking lot the way it happened in New York.
In other words, if he's determined to do it, he's going to.
So it's my theory that yes, we've got to do something about guns. When you think about things like the bump stock was put out during the Obama administration, and it was done as an ADA thing, American Disabilities Act, because people who couldn't pull the trigger because they're disabled used their shoulder on it, and that's what caused the gun to fire.
Okay.
So that's where that whole bump stock thing was developed. It's time to get rid of that.
Right.
And a lot of other things. People have a misnomer. AR-15 does not stand for assault rifle. AR is the Armalite Rifle Company that manufactured the gun in 1959 under a government contract for the military. It is not a military gun. It is not used by the military. As a matter of fact, it is not as powerful as everybody thinks because they don't use it for deer hunting or hunting big game because it's a lightweight gun. It's used basically for target and small game hunting. It is the gun of choice amongst other people. Why? Because it looks ominous. You put all those cowlings on it and those scopes on it and those big braces on it and everything else, and it looks like a monster. But but if you put a Ferrari body on a Mini Cooper, it doesn't make it a race car.
That's right. That's right.
So, but is it the gun of choice? It is. It's lightweight, and that's it. But I don't look at going after the NRA. The NRA is a group that...
Give me 1 second, Michael. The show's ending here on the radio, but we're going to just finish up this conversation on our Facebook Live. So if you can go to the KC Ingram Show Facebook page, you'll see the rest of Michael's comments here on Facebook Live. Thank you for tuning in.